Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you are doing well. And today we have an exclusive conversation with the one and only Damon Albarn, co-creator of Gorillaz, of course. The new record, The Mountain, is out now. I'm excited to talk about it. Hype that Damon has taken another moment out of his time to talk to me about a new project the legendary virtual band has out. Damon, I appreciate you coming through.
My pleasure.
Let's start with, if we can, just the the Moon Cave short film and animated visual that you guys just dropped, because that's really kind of like one of the latest things to talk about.
Yeah,
It,
but
you know,
that's why we haven't done any visuals beforehand. That's why it's taken so long, really. Because I finished this record, to be honest with you, last May.
hmm,
And it's just taken a long time to do it. But that's what hand-drawn animation requires. If you're going to do it, if you're going to do it properly, and we've had a big hiatus from that. But I feel like the combination of the two is where we're really our soul is. So I feel like we're back after quite a while. You know what I mean?
well, I was going to say, you and Jamie sort of like consciously taking that short in a direction where you're trying to like recapture that 60s Disney magic with all of those sort of like nods to the Jungle Book and, the allegory of that.
Yeah.
What do you guys feel like you learned creatively about specifically that style and that process in trying to sort of like chase after it in the way that you guys
Um,
did?
well, you can't rush it. You know, it is the embodiment of slow art. But when it's done, it's kind of sort of it's so vibrant, and it's kind of it's a bit of a case of the tortoise and the hare.
Hmm. It obviously, like, kind of going in that direction, there's limitations to that medium as well, as much as there is like, a lot of detail. Were there sort of upsides, downsides to sort of putting pressure on the process in that way, where you had to sort of like, work
Well, I
within the
mean,
boundaries that that medium kind of like has?
I mean, it's totally more Jamie's part of the band,
Mm,
and for me, it was really just kind of sort of watching it from the hand drawn sketches, and then it kind of goes into this a group pool of animators that's huge, all drawing, and with this one, we had hand painted backdrops which were filmed, like so. Yeah, everything was very lo-fi in that sense,
mm.
totally analog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, moving away from the, I guess, like the literal animation process itself, there is also in just the storytelling of the piece, like a lot of symbolism when it comes
Yeah.
to the growth and change of Gorillaz as
Well,
a project
I think
itself.
you know it's at the center of what this record is kind of about. This this mini odyssey that Jamie and I took to India over a period of two journeys. Yeah, and the themes that emerged from that. The first journey that we took was more kind of just sort of trying to take everything in, and made a bit of music, listened to a lot of music, went to some amazing kind of Indian theatre, a lot of temples, a lot of museums. Um, and then we came back, and in that interim period, both our fathers died. And I suppose at that point we we were so kind of sort of overwhelmed by kind of everything that happens when your father or your mother dies. It's a very profound step up in the kind of sort of the individual journey. Having no parent left. So seeing the fact that they died within 10 days of each other, and Jamie and I are born 10 days apart. So there was this kind of um, there was this kind of geometry emerging. And I suppose the second trip, we went to the ancient city of Varanasi, which is on the Ganges. I scattered my father's ashes on the Ganges, and the whole experience, I think, really kind of that was where I felt, I sort of know emotionally what this record is about. Um, yeah, and then it sort of evolved from that. But it was a long process, and then a long
W-
process waiting for Jamie's part of it to become manifest.
Given the trip and what you experienced there, and just obviously these massive life changes that
Yeah, people
led to.
you inevitably have, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course. I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
like, sort of, I am sort of curious as to where you sort of feel spiritually right now, because that's obviously like a huge part of, the album's like core themes and stuff like that. Going into this album, or sort of years prior, in previous eras, would you say you were at all sort of personally agnostic, deeply religious? Did that shift at all over the course of all of this?
Oh, well, I mean, I have a much sort of far more far-reaching relationship with India because my parents were really into sort of aspects of Hindu spirituality when I was a child, and we
Hmm.
lived in a part of East London that was predominantly Indian and Pakistani. So my neighbours growing up from childhood were Pakistani. Uh, and all the music. I mean, I've said it a few times, but it's not. It is a truth that I listened to Ravi Shankar before I listened to the Beatles, and yet, sort of when you think of musicians going to India, you always think of the Beatles. And in fact, in this town of this town on the Ganges where the Beatles went to an ashram, and there's a bridge you go over, and it's all become quite touristy in a way. And if you take a right, you go to the Beatles ashram. If you take a left, you go to all and sundry other ashrams that have kind of sort of grown up in the wake of this sort of weird connection. India is a place I would recommend anyone goes to at some point. It is so extraordinarily ancient and diverse and colourful and beautiful, and really does give you a different kind of relationship with the idea of death at the end.
Well, with that in mind, and you just like kind of brought up the Beatles,
Yeah,
the idea of a musician going over there to sort of gain some kind of experience or point of view on something. It's almost become like a bit of a storied thing at this point.
sure.
And given some of the views of tourism that you saw when you were over there as well, was there any sort of additional effort you needed to put in, given your
Well,
recommendation that
it's
people go over
quite
there and
hard
experience
sometimes.
it?
I didn't for one second go there wanting to kind of retrace the steps of the Beatles, but
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
no,
how do you
no, no,
break through
but
the
it's
break
kind of
through the?
extraordinary. There were a couple of occasions where I did feel, oh, this is something's happening here. I remember being in New Delhi and I was just walking around and I saw this tiny little shop that sold sitars,
Hmm.
and I thought, oh, that's exciting. I mean, it's really tiny. So I opened the door and I went in there, and there's just this guy sitting at his desk and these beautiful sitars everywhere. And we got talking, and then saw there was a little picture, just a tiny little picture behind his desk, and I said, "Oh, that's George Harrison." He said, "Yeah, yeah. My dad owned this shop before me, and he sold George Harrison his first ever sitar." And I thought, "Oh, okay, right. Well, this is happening anyway, whether I like it or not, you know.
Right.
But then he turned out to be the same age as me and born on the same day. So this is the thing about India. It's the cosmology of the whole experience is unavoidable. So in that sense, I suppose I was meant to do this.
Meant to do. I mean,
Yeah.
that was like my concern. Is there like a cynicism or a worry of kind of cliche there, and was it a matter of breaking it or just
Well, I mean,
just embracing it?
be honest with you, I've spent the last 20 years making a lot of music in Africa in many regions. So actually going to India wasn't that big a leap for me. It wasn't a huge cultural kind of shock in any sense. I've been to yeah, I've just been to a lot of places. So working with musicians who are outside of my own culture is not unfamiliar to me either. This is, it's one of the amazing privileges that pop music has afforded me is that I can use it to further, my understanding of the world and how important multiculturalism is. And, yet again, we find ourselves realizing how important it is and how we need to sort of solve our differences through understanding and not bombs.
Excellent point. Sort of talking about all of
I've
those
actually
different.
been to Iran. I have actually been to Iran.
Hmm.
I traveled all around it, and I actually found it another beautiful, beautiful country. So I'm a bit devastated that it's ended like this, but that's where we are.
Um, Sort of in the spirit of the various collaborations that you've done over the years, at what point, given obviously the placements that you have on this record from
Mhm.
legends who you've worked with, Bobby Womack,
Well,
Marcus Smith.
that kind came later. In fact, we started.
Yeah. At what point does
But
like
we
this
started
project
that.
become like a tribute to past collaborators who have passed on?
Well, not so much a tribute. It's just it felt like when you're sort of, especially in Varanasi, where public cremation has been going on for 5,000 years, every day, every night. You really are amongst the dead. Literally,
Hmm.
it's the city of the dead, um, and that's where I kind of came up with the idea that uh, you know I wanted to bring those amazing dead musicians kind of back to life in this context. But I didn't think about it until that moment. So, but and so I sort of got on the phone to London and I was going, can everyone start looking through all of the outtakes on in the recordings? And some of them go back a long way, to get something from Proof. I also looked for something from Terry Hall there, but his tracks have been completely cleaned up because sometimes over the years I've worked with very efficient engineers who just leave the strip clean and just have the performance on it. Others were not so tidy in their you know in their job, and actually that's where I got the most interesting stuff that I could use because it was kind of, I don't want to use something I've already used. It's just got to be if there are any outtakes. So, and then some people I couldn't even their estates wouldn't allow me on the god on the Plastic Guru. The voice at the beginning is actually a replica of Lou Reed's voice. It was Lou Reed, and then I was told to take it off. So
Oh,
I didn't want to take what he'd said to me off.
right. No,
So
that's fair.
because I thought it was really interesting.
Hmm. And what once you were sort of piecing these performances and outtakes together, was it a matter of working them into music you were already sort of like tracking or building around what you were able to find to sort of like, make sure that it made sense because it was kind of at the core of what you were doing already? Or
Yeah,
a little bit of both.
I just sort of tried to do it intuitively, Um, like someone like Marquis Smith, I had loads of stuff left that I hadn't used when we did Glitter Freeze, and I thought, well, there's enough here for me to try and and his words are so interesting and weirdly so kind of modern sounding, you know.
No, I mean that's just kind of the lyricist that he was. Um, but I mean,
Well, he was a pretty lyricist, so why waste one word of Marquis Smith?
no,
And
it's true. I mean, I guess like off of that, what I want to ask is, given the vibes that turn up on that track, which, do feel in the spirit of Glitter Freeze, and I'm not just saying because obviously, they came from similar sessions, but I'm also thinking of, some of the,
yeah, it is. It is weirdly reminiscent of that, but I think that's
well,
maybe
on the God of
because of
Lying, they
him.
were on the God of Lying. They're also kind of these like jaunty synth chords that feel almost like a callback to Clint Eastwood a little bit in a way. Like,
Yeah,
are there moments on this album musically where you're sort of very purposefully trying to reference back to past era of Gorillaz?
I suppose so, sort of. I mean, I'm kind of an anti-nostalgist by principle, and I think the diversity of my work would stand true to
No,
that.
I agree, which is why it was a little surprising. Like Gorillaz has always sort of seemed like a very forward thinking project, but the sort of appreciating things that have happened that brought us to this point does sort of seem like
I just
consciously or
feel like,
subconsciously
yeah,
part of this album's DNA.
I feel really for me, this is the next record after Flat Plastic Beach because the relationship between Jamie and I did sort of deteriorate quite a lot. He moved to France, and we didn't spend so much time together.
Hmm.
And you know, this time round, we spent a lot of time together. We travelled a lot. We talked from the beginning. We talked about what we were going to do, and that really felt like it used to when we worked, like in the 2000s with Gorillaz. So in a way, you could say we've had a strange hiatus since 2010.
Um,
I know that sounds weird because obviously a lot of stuff's happened, but
no, it doesn't
and the
sound weird. I
world
mean,
has
like,
changed profoundly in that time. So it is different, but yeah, I feel it's like it's sort of it's got a big theme. It's got a heart like Plastic Beach. And
no,
I
and
and it's a record I kind of ended up producing myself
right. No, I
again.
mean there are a lot
With
of fans
same with
who have
Plastic Beach.
observed the Plastic Beach sort of like likeness as well, and again, people have been following the band know that yours and Jamie's relationship has had its ups and downs, but like
Yeah,
bringing it back to that, to what do you attribute sort of
yeah.
like
That
the
that
fact that it's been enduring for so long? Like what kind of continues to bring you guys back even with these hiatuses? And I don't mean just like, Gorillas as a project. Obviously, that has come back numerous times, and we sort of like
yeah,
get the gist of that. But like,
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah.
keeps you and Jamie connected despite these fissures that come up
We
occasionally?
we're very very old friends who love each other dearly and have a very similar kind of sort of worldview in many ways.
So even after all of that time, sort of your
But
perspectives on
we
things
didn't
have
stop
kept
being
you closer.
friends. We didn't stop being friends or working
No, no,
together.
no.
Just saying that really, bands. We are a band. It's just one of us is an animator, cartoonist, and one of us is a musician. But bands go through periods where they're not quite in the same room with each other, and then suddenly they find out it's a band is a
Well,
weird
and
it's a
also
weird.
don't agree on.
My point is a band is a weird chemistry,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've experienced it, you know, with other bands that I've been in. It's kind of sometimes everyone's there, and sometimes they're not quite so much, and the music reflects that in a weird
Hmm.
way.
No, and I was going to say like, and not only are they just not in the same room together, but also don't share the same views on certain things
Exactly,
anymore. And it's
exactly.
encouraging and
I
interesting to
don't
see
think,
that you guys still share that.
yeah, yeah, I don't think we've ever stopped. We've been very, very close like that, But I think, and we're already kind of sort of excited about what we're going to do next because we've had I've definitely had quite a lot of time to think about it since I finished that. Um, but yeah, we've got another big idea.
Um, thinking about some of the other collaborators on the album, and we've talked about this before. Under Gorillaz, you have sort of worked with and created some great tracks with a lot of like, UK music legends, I guess you could say, over the years. What made you tap Johnny Marr for this record, and what was he like contributing to the album, and what was he bringing to the table that had you sort of, that sort of made him a regular, because he does crop up on
Yeah.
the album quite a bit.
Johnny's just got when Johnny plays the guitar, it's very emotional. And for Jamie and I, the Smiths were our band when we were 14, 15.
Right. I imagine pretty formative band for you guys.
Oh my God, it was. I mean, you have no idea the effect that the Beatles had on people of my age in England. We all dressed like Morrissey. We all became vegetarians.
Oh my God.
We all danced quite camply together. You know what I mean? It was amazing, really. Along for me, along with bands like the Pixies, they were my bands at that particular time. Getting the chance to, I love working with him. He's a great musician. He's a great collaborator, and what a privilege to work with him, and to get him and Paul on a tune together.
Right, you had Paul Simonon as well on bass.
Yeah, so if anyone who gets to see us at that big music venue in North London that we're playing, there'll be definitely I can't name it because it's another football team's stadium.
And specifically for, I mean, at what point did for you Johnny sort of like make sense as an inclusion in the album? Was it something about sort of like his guitar style and tone that almost like that classic jangliness that kind of made sense within the palette that you guys were creating here?
I think so. He's also thought a lot about Hinduism and knows quite a lot about it. So he's into the idea of reincarnation. So it's easy to work with him on a project like this.
Thinking of some of the spiritual themes of this record, and the idea of passing on and in afterlife in general, where do you personally feel on that front currently? Given this album, is it reincarnation? Is it an afterlife for you personally?
Well, it's a void for sure. It's it's a complete transition to something else. You don't die and then get up and resume your life. I think, it's anything you really want it to be. I think there's just, I keep saying this, but when you die, you definitely become something else. So that principle, you can do whatever you like with that, really.
Is it something in your view that when you sort of move on is connected to the world that we sort of like know and are existing in now and the people who we know, or is it more singular?
I think it's more abstract, just way, way more abstract than that. Which is doesn't really, abstraction on that level doesn't sit really well with the commercial world, because it's how we're going to monetize this.
Speaking of which, like, you guys went out on obviously a limb with this album in a lot of ways, not just with the fact that, you've brought in just all of these different collaborators, this mountain of instrumentation, but also, this record is being put out through your own label, Kong.
Oh yeah.
That sort of like independence, did that change at all, sort of like the creative direction or process of this record in any way, or were there other reasons kind of like driving,
I just completely lost all faith and relationship with more corporate model. I think, I started off on a really little label called Food Records, which was ironically eaten by Parlophone.
Right.
And then I had a very happy 1990s under Tony Wadsworth on Parlophone, and then it sort of just became more and more distant, and I knew less and less people. The whole culture of the music industry changed. So it was, once my finally my all my contracts were finished, I was able to make a decision. Do I go back into that world, or do we start again in our own sphere, really? Uh, and we decided that being independent was absolutely the best way to go.
Has that overall, all things considered, made things, I guess, in terms of releasing this record, creating this record, more difficult, easier?
I mean, the people I work with have been extraordinary. They've worked so hard. They've had to work twice as hard because we've done it in we work with the same people, our management, all the same people, and people distribution wise at auction who are a lovely family of independent distributors. Yeah, I'm happy at the moment. I have to wait and see how it how it sort of reveals itself, because it's all very new, but
Hmm.
things seem to be going excellently. So I've only got myself to complain to that now.
I mean, just as a music fan, like everything that I've been seeing from my side, it just sort of seems like, regardless of what sector of the music industry that you're talking about, there's just been more consolidation than ever. Just
Mm.
like more being owned by fewer big wigs and so on and so forth. And it sort of seems like everything is just kind of concentrating at the top at an astronomical rate, whether you're
Yeah.
talking about either the distribution platforms or even AI now.
Well, exactly. AI is just. I mean, I think there was a foolish moment where the big corporations thought AI was going to like make their life easier and more money, and well, uh, that is not the case. It's just going to. It there. I don't think it's possible for AI to make soulful music.
I agree. Um, what, but, and this is a very unfortunate but, I feel like all these corporations have invested so much money into it that they're basically like, well, we're screwed if this doesn't pan out.
Yeah,
So
no,
they've got to find ways to shove it down everyone's throat so that they can try to struggle to make it work.
I hear you. I hear you. Uh, yeah, I mean, I've been quite involved with AI because I've been making a score for a movie called Artificial at the moment, which is all about the founders of ChatGPT.
Mm.
So I've kind of sort of had a lot of time to sort of think about it. Music and art should not be easy. Once it becomes easy, it's meaningless. In a way, it's the things you don't see or hear that make it art. You know what I mean? In a way, it's a weird intuition that the listener has. You know, that picks up on the journey that the artist has been through to make that particular thing, with the tone of their voice, etc., etc. And you can't replace that.
It's a weird kind of I don't know. I feel like the only way it could be framed is like an entitlement. Um, I feel like at no other point other than now could you sell people on the idea that after putting in no effort whatsoever, you deserve to be an artist anyway,
Yeah,
and here's like a
well,
quick fix as
I
to
mean,
how to make it happen.
that is partly a symptom of platforms like TikTok, isn't it? Where people who, and I'm absolutely got nothing against new platforms for new artists to emerge. I just feel sometimes it's it's a little kind of bloated what happens.
I'm sure that you, like everybody else, has been taken with like maybe some of the images of figure skater Alyssa Liu sort of performing and absolutely killing it out there on the ice. But I don't see her and think like, that should be me. You know, if only
Yeah,
somebody could create a shortcut for me to become
yeah.
that
Well,
talented of a figure skater
don't think
overnight.
there's any shortcuts to
Right,
being
exactly.
an ice skating champion.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah,
be
no,
and be
but the
and
same
being a
amount.
great artist takes just as much practice.
And yes, it does. It certainly does. And I'm still really practicing, trying my hardest to. I know I love what I do, but I'm under no illusion that I'm anything other than like I'm going to use I'm a novice. I'm maybe a little bit further than an obligate, but I'm still a novice.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like the practice, if you're truly good at it and you care about it, the practice never really stops.
Well, I kind of think, yeah, you should always stay a novice, because it means you're always learning. And and that's kind of sort of a thing about nostalgia is that, if you start to lean too heavily into the glories, past glories, you maybe cease to learn.
I think another kind of key theme that comes up in a lot of the lyrics of this record, at least from what I'm reading, it kind of comes across as like maybe a bit of maybe not nostalgia, but maybe regret, for maybe the person that you or the protagonist in a particular track has become, or maybe where things have ended up. I sort of wanted to know, like,
Well, I think
are these personal feelings or sort of statements within the?
I'm a chastened man, so
Right, right, right.
really explicit. Yeah, I mean, God, yeah, I've
No,
met
no,
lots.
it's very explicit. I just wanted to sort of, I guess, like, do these feelings are these sort of like only extending to the project Gorillaz itself? Is it more a commentary on the state of the world, or is it more personal?
All three.
All three. At this point, what regrets do you feel like Gorillaz even have at this point? I mean, I think from like outside view, the fans kind of view it as a pretty great and sort of successful project.
Oh yeah, no, I have no regrets with this record, and I have no regrets with the animated aspect of it.
Well, not the record, but just broadly across the entirety of the project's existence, I guess.
I think it's all a process, isn't it? And sometimes the process really shines, and sometimes it's a bit dull. It's quite hard to shine for 40 years every time. That's
Uh,
I
no,
try.
it
I
is abs.
try.
It is.
I
It is.
really do try, I promise you, but sometimes I maybe not quite as successful as I would like to be. But that's okay because, like I mean, I did an opera with a kind of it's quite I'll try and praise it, but Goethe, the great German writer, wrote a Magic Flute Part Two, which he didn't finish. He wanted Mozart to do it, but Mozart died, so he just put it in a cupboard, and it was lost for 200 years. So it's this kind of 12-page fragment of the Magic Flute Part Two. Anyway, someone commissioned me to kind of bring it to life. So I made an opera, which was performed in Paris last year. But I mean, no one really knows that I did it. But it took me 2 years of really hard work to get to that point, which is a case in point. Everyone knows I put this record out, but no one knows that I did that. But it doesn't matter to me because it's all about the process. It's all about learning. And, I just fucking love what I do.
One of the things that I've consistently loved about you and, Gorillaz and anything else that you're involved in, again, you really are sort of like a student and almost like a researcher, I
Yeah.
guess. It's
I love study. For me, it's so, yeah. I mean, that's my shit, really. It's kind of research and study. And yeah, I'm interested in the history of anything, you know. Because it's just like how did anything get here? It's just fascinating, really. Like even the history of this T-shirt and his campaign using kind of sort of a mixture of um, different fonts, you know, from like street signs and stuff. That's interesting. You know, everything has a process.
Right, and it also reflects the multiculturalism of the campaign too.
100%.
Um, going off of something that you mentioned earlier in terms of, the experience that you had going over to India, and uh, what I specifically want to dig into is the music, that you heard and saw over there. I think, due to streaming and the internet, there's kind of this like perception, but the more that I, as a music fan, sort of like consume this art form through digital spaces, I feel like the perception that you can hear it all through the internet and basically, get your full of whatever kind of music that you're interested through the internet. It's a bit of a false one. There's a truth to it, but I think it's a bit of a false one.
I still think books are very important.
No, they certainly are. I guess what I wanted to ask kind of with that preface is, what did you sort of hear and experience on the ground in India musically that you feel like your average person isn't going to get merely by just looking it up online? What is it that you came across and heard that sort of maybe inspired you, or kind of?
It's context, you know.
Right, you're missing sort of like the cultural aspect of what the
Yeah,
meaning behind the music is.
yeah,
Which is part of the danger, and not to get back into this like topic again, but it's part of the danger around AI, and,
yeah.
and people sort of generating their own tracks. And from what I've seen as a practice, a lot of people sort of like making use of these generative platforms the most. All they really end up doing is just listening to their own music and not listening to anything else.
Mm.
And not only is that robbing artists of money, that they could be getting from their music actually being purchased or consumed, but simultaneously, there's no greater communal meaning to what is coming out of those platforms, and as a result, nothing's really being conveyed, or sort of like given to the listener in terms of like what this music is trying to communicate, or what kind of world it comes out over context.
Yeah, and yet there's still great music being put out there,
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely.
because there is a resistance, and we're a very dissipated and diverse resistance, but we do exist, and we need to support each other, be militant, you know.
No, I agree. I feel like the further things go along, it does kind of require like a militance of.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of going right back to bands like the Smiths, and the Specials. These incredibly informative and important, and the Clash. There was a militancy there. In it was cool for kids to be into politics,
Right.
and have an opinion and make a change
And imbue what you're doing with meaning.
exactly.
Hmm.
And you could say, "Oh, that's very nostalgic, Damon. I thought you were an anti-nostalgist." But I'm not asking for their ideas to be regurgitated. It's obviously got to be new ideas, new energies, new sounds. But that principles are not like nostalgic.
You're not pushing the principle for its attachment to the past.
No,
You're
exactly.
looking for a new version of it, and you yourself are doing a new version of it. It's not like what you're saying on this record is what the Smiths said on Beat Is Murder. It's
Oh,
not, the
well, I
same.
mean, in part, what I'm saying is stuff that's been there for thousands of years.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Really old, really old.
Mm. um, Listen, I'm really enjoying the new album so far, and appreciate you taking the time, and
My
thank
pleasure.
you for
My
digging
pleasure.
into the album a little bit with me, and just kind of the creative process, and just
You're a good one. You're a good one out there. So
I
I,
appreciate you. I feel
I
this
appreciate you
the
too.
feeling is mutual.
Okay.